back. It is episode 52 of the CCHA Reporters Corner on Midwest Sports Plus. I'm one half of your co-host, Jared Rubedo with the Bemidji Pioneer. With me is the better half of the co-host, Trent Singer from Sioux Falls Live. Trent, how are we doing today?
Doing good, man. Doing good. It's early in the morning, but this is early for me. I mean, I don't know about you guys. This is way too early for me. But I'm here and I'm awake. Got my coffee going, and we have Timber on here, so we're awake.
Yes. So before I officially introduce Tim, on Saturday night, Trent's at the Pentagon covering NSIC basketball with probably both eyes more on the CCHA, considering how close Augustana came.
I was trying.
And I called Trent and I was like, "Hey, look, like this is crazy how this whole weekend played out. I think a quick podcast on Monday morning, and quick is maybe a little bit of a liberal use of that word because nothing we ever do is quick with this show.
No.
But certainly Tim Brown knows that too, and so we brought Tim Brown on from Tech Hockey Guide. I think before Tim, thanks for joining. I'll get into more of it, but thank you for joining, Tim. Tough weekend for your Huskies, but luckily for you, we are not going to recap the games as much this morning. Basically what we're going to do is just do a quick timeline of events, how this league played out, how the final 8 games of this league, how they shook out, and how we got to the 1 through 8 seeding we have. We're going to quickly go over a tiebreaker explainer, how these tiebreakers came to be, give our thoughts on, a lot of the discussion topics that are currently going around the CCHA sphere. And then we did pull some questions on Twitter yesterday to go into it. We are not going to kind of go through how the teams play. You'll get enough of that on the CCHA show this week. You'll get it on Chase and MacNaughton, especially if you want more of an insight on Bowling Green and Michigan Tech. Chase and MacNaughton, part of the Tech Hockey Guide family, or it's the flagship show of Tech Hockey Guide in a lot of ways. So you'll get all your BG Tech stuff from them. I'm sure, Falcon Student Media does a great job too. I mean, if you want more of a BG perspective on that point instead of the Tech perspective. But Tim, thanks again for joining. We'll just start
here bright and early this morning.
Yes.
The only reason I'm available is because my daughter has orchestra, so I have to get her to school an hour earlier than normal. So I'm ready.
Oh, I love it.
Gotcha. So, should we just jump into the timeline? Is that kind of where we're at of how this played out? Because I got it. Okay, so I'll quickly go through this because it starts on Thursday, and going into it, we had Augustana at 50 points. We had St. Thomas and Michigan Tech tied for second at 48 points. Do not care about the tiebreakers just yet. We had, Minnesota State at 46 points, Bowling Green at 44 points, and then Bemidji State, Lake State, and Ferris State follows. On Thursday, Ferris State beats Lake State, which essentially locks up 8th place for Ferris State. It eliminates Northern Michigan, and it for all intents and purposes, put Lake State in 7th place and Bemidji State in 6th, which was finalized by Bemidji State beating St. Thomas later that night. Bowling Green shuts out Michigan Tech 1-0 in Houghton behind 30 saves from Tyler Palmer. Bemidji State then beats St. Thomas, and then Caden Galt from Northern Michigan scores an extra attacker goal with 1:36 left to force overtime, and then Minnesota State wins the shootout point, tying. Well, not tying, but now you have Augustana at 50, St. Thomas at 48, Michigan Tech at 48, Minnesota State at 48, and Bowling Green at 47 after Friday night's slate of games. Then we go to Saturday. Bowling Green beats Tech in overtime, and those two teams then finish at a tie with 49 points. Bemidji State and St. Thomas then go to overtime, tied 2-2, which at that point it meant that Minnesota State was the only team in the CCHA that could win the MacNaughton Cup outright. Minnesota State then scores 2 empty net goals, wins the MacNaughton Cup, wins the number 1 overall seed, and then St. Thomas goes on to win the shootout in a tie against Bemidji State, which also had tiebreaker implications. Am I missing anything from how this timeline of event played out, gentlemen?
The only thing you're missing is that the first of the last two Minnesota State goals was not an empty netter, unless the goalie was trying to pull out. It was like 100-foot shot, but it was not an empty net goal. It was
Oliver
got back for it. Yep.
Yeah, Oliver Young-Ashton was like at the bench and skated all the way back, and then dove, got a piece of it, hit the post, and goes in. So technically, it's not an empty netter.
I was only half watching, so I never got the full replay, because I think that happened while I was watching that game on my phone while Bemidji State and St. Thomas were playing overtime. So
gotcha.
All I'll say about this timeline is that it was crazy enough that Augie was still in it after the first day. Crazy enough.
Right.
And then you're down to the final 3 games. The one thing that I thought was maybe the most impossible, you needed exactly 5 points from Bowling Green. They end up getting that. So then you're looking at a 1-0 game. Minnesota State's up. Northern's right in it. And then Bemidji at that time was up 2-1. And so I had people walking up to me at the...
Northern had a power play midway through that third period, too.
They had a chance to tie it.
Real. Yeah.
And I had people coming up to me saying, Trent, what's going on with Augie? Are they still in it? And I go, unbelievably, yes. They got the exact outcome they needed against Bowling Green. And we joked last week, Jared, that like it's more likely that Bowling Green gets 5 points than it is for Northern to get 3. And that's exactly what happened. Like the 5 points happened.
Yeah.
Northern ends up
5 points.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. And so I'm watching the games. I've got an amazing NSIC quarterfinal game where I don't think it was within 2 possessions the entire game, and I'm trying to pay attention to the game in front of me while I'm watching 2 hockey games going on. I got Mark Ovenden sitting next to me watching the games as well. And it was just like, it was a madhouse. I couldn't believe that they were even in it. And then it comes down to, okay, well, Minnesota State wins the game. They take those points, and then you're talking about Bemidji State and St. Thomas basically in a shootout was what it ended up being, deciding who gets the 2 seed.
Yes. And another interesting note at the end of that Bemidji State game, there was a really, really, really bad missed call at the end that had a lot of seeding implications in the moment, because Bemidji State took a penalty at the end of overtime with about 2 minutes and 20 seconds left, whatever it was.
They had a wide open net too with like 2-3 seconds left in overtime.
Yes. And so, whatever happens, they come out of the box, and somehow Kirkland Irie finds himself on a breakaway, and he was just dragged down. I don't know if there was another angle where it was a little less damning from that perspective, but it was so bad that we were genuinely like concerned that Saratori was going to come on the ice. Like, he was at the doorstep, opening the door and slamming it in the ref's face, like just screaming at him. Like, I have not seen him that upset in 3 years on this beat. I'm sure.
Let's say something.
Right. So that was, again, I'll preface it by saying, I think there might've been like another angle that was in front of Irie that was maybe a little bit more, less damning, I guess, is I would say it. But if Irie scores that goal, now I believe St. Thomas is hosting Bowling Green, and then Bemidji goes to Tech. No, Bemidji.
No. St. Thomas would have been the 3. I believe. Well, no, would that have been a 3-way tie then?
No, it would have been St. Thomas, because Bowling Green had less regulation wins.
Oh, you're right. Yes,
so then they get 5th yet, and then St. Thomas wins on head-to-head.
Wow. So there was implications there for you guys too, big time implications.
And there was a real point as we had Tony Pasquesi up in Bemidji this weekend, the St. Thomas SID, and there's a point where he looked at me in the third period. He goes, "Oh my God, we're going to Ohio." When Bemidji State was up 2-1 at the start of the third period, Minnesota State was up 1-0, and everything was breaking for St. Thomas to finish 5th and have to go to Ohio in the first round. So I thought that was another interesting wrinkle in this. But so that's how it played out, and we finished the season with, in the 1 spot, Minnesota State. In the 2 spot, St. Thomas. In the 3 is Augustana. 4 is Michigan Tech. 5 is Bowling Green. 6, Bemidji State. 7, Lake Superior State. 8th, Ferris State. And 9th, and also eliminated, Northern Michigan. Minnesota State has 51 points. Augie 50. St. Thomas, Bowling Green, and Tech all tied for 49.
No,
is that correct?
Augie 50.
Oh,
St.
no,
Thomas
sorry.
50.
Apologies.
Yeah,
Apologies.
St. Thomas and Augie tied.
St. Thomas and Augie tied.
Yeah.
Michigan Tech
there
and
was
Bowling
there
Green
were certainly chances for a 4-way tie.
Right. We got
really
really
fun.
close, boys.
My Friday night was spent breaking down all the possibilities, and I got through about
welcome to the
thirds
club.
of them and called it a night.
Yep, that's about what I did too. So, and as did Perry Lascaris.
Right.
And I think
he
this
gets
is
paid for that. I don't.
Yeah, true.
Correct. So then we'll go into how these tiebreakers mattered, right? The first tiebreaker is head-to-head wins with a caveat. And the caveat is that you have to play an equal amount of home and road games against each other. The second so if you do not play a home series and a road series against the team that you are looking to break a tie with, you do not, head-to-head does not come into the equation. So then it defaults to regulation wins in league play. And if those teams still have the same amount of regulation wins in league play, then it goes down to conference winning percentage. And that was the depth of how we got of the tiebreakers. It never got below winning percentage, I believe, right?
It could have. It could have. There was one. I think there were 4 possibilities where goal differential was going to come into play.
Wow.
And it didn't happen. We almost got one because I think if St. Thomas.
If St. Thomas wouldn't have picked up the extra point, one goal differential.
I think if Bowling Green had won in regulation, we may have gotten to how St. Thomas got to 50 would have mattered, and we could have gotten to goal differential. But Bowling Green had to be tied with them to get that far.
Correct. But we did not get that far.
We didn't.
And so
the fun part of working through them too is making sure you understand what the CCHA means by winning percentage. Like, what do shootout wins and losses mean? They mean nothing in that.
Nothing.
Because it's basically, how does the NCAA treat that game? Was it a win, which is a result in the first 65 minutes? Was it a win in regulation or overtime? And then if it was a loss, it's a loss in 65. And then if it goes to shootout, it's just a tie. Because that's how NPI treats that game.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what best winning percentage is based on, is the conference games of that level.
I will also note that something interesting that I found out this weekend, the last tiebreaker in the CCHA is a coin flip.
Oh, there's always got to be that one. It's either a coin flip or a drawing of lots, right? Like, you got to get there at some point, because there's always the possibility that they're just all tied.
All the tiebreakers, yep.
Yeah.
But I think this is a good time to kind of explain how these tiebreakers came to be, and because there's been a lot of discussion, and I think discussion is like the very nice way of putting how the discourse on these tiebreakers has gone in the last 24 to 36 hours. These tiebreakers were voted on by each of the league members at the start of the new CCHA or the league's inception, so to say. There has not once been serious pushback from any single team in this league to alter the tiebreakers.
The one exception being we changed it last year because Augustana didn't play an equal number of
Correct.
games, right?
Which was also, again, unanimously voted on by the league members to do that league by points percentage. When talking about these tiebreakers from a league perspective, there seems to be this assumption that the CCHA is like a dictatorship of sorts, where you have one person at the top of the chain, the top of the food chain, saying, this is how we are doing these things. This is how, I don't care that Bowling Green played twice against Michigan Tech and beat them twice on the road. We stick to these tiebreakers because I said them to be that way. That is not how the CCHA works. It is never how the CCHA works. I guess I can't confirm, but I would imagine that's not how any college hockey conference works. These were voted on. by the league coaches, the league ADs, however the schools wanted to cast their vote, with whomever was in the room when they decided to vote on these things. The schools vote on it. And if there's serious pushback, they will bring it to the league meetings in the summer. They will discuss it, potentially vote on it again. And I actually do think that there's probably a lane to do that this summer. I don't think there's anybody saying that this is a perfect system, because there's no such thing as a perfect system when it comes to tiebreakers.
Right.
It is
The whole point is it's not going to be fair because you're breaking a tie.
Correct.
Somebody's going to be upset about how this happened because they won the other tiebreakers, but that wasn't the order of them, right? It's just not.
Or it wasn't
fair.
a tiebreaker.
Or it was ignored because you didn't play the equal game.
Yes.
I understand Bowling Green being frustrated because they won on the road.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that was the only opportunity. But Tech has won in Bowling Green, so they didn't get the chance to respond. And it also I don't know. The other part of the schedule that I was frustrated with this year was Tech's last 3 series were all against teams they had not played yet, which was very weird to me. Not that I want to get into Tech, but it's very weird going into the last weekend and having it be the only time you've seen that team.
That was the same for Bemidji State too. 2 of their last 3 opponents were teams they did not play in the regular season up until that point.
Yeah.
So
and you could you could foreseeably
Go ahead, Trent.
Yeah, you could foreseeably make the argument that if you were to play this balanced schedule, that's an opportunity for Tech to reclaim its games that it lost at home. And same for Augustana. I mean, you could make the argument that St. Thomas could have had its say in, or Augustana could have had its say in the tiebreaker over it. Sure. The point being is that we're in a 9-team league right now, and next year it's not going to matter. You're 8 teams. You're going to play one team that there will be one team that each team plays that it won't have a balanced schedule with. Everybody else you'll have a balanced schedule with. And it won't matter. I don't even know that there's a point of contention over the summer to change the tiebreaker rules. There might be 2 schools that really want it, and the only 2 that are going to make that argument are Augustana and Bowling Green. And I don't even know that Augustana cares enough. I really don't think. I mean, and talking, I texted with Rabs a little bit yesterday. I asked him if he watched these games. He didn't watch a single game this weekend. That goes to show you that they didn't care. They really genuinely did not care. I saw all the guys after the basketball game. They were fired up and ready to play Bemidji State. The only people who care here are the fans. You think Augustana doesn't want to play the team that knocked them out of the playoffs last year, especially a team that, all these guys are back from last season. They all experienced that last year. They want Bemidji State. If you want to build something into the postseason, this is the exact team that you want to play to start it. And so I think it's laughable if there's any Augustana fans that are. I get if there are Bowling Green fans that are upset about this.
That's
I
totally
one. Understand
Bowling Green has a little bit more of a gripe, I think.
But the reality
not
is
actually not of a gripe, not a gripe at all.
It should not be because the reality is it's out of your control. These tiebreakers, you knew what you needed to get it done. You needed the full 6 points.
Right. The biggest thing I didn't understand in the Bowling Green game is the coach knows he needs 3 points to not be last unless there's some other weird tie that springboards them, right? Why didn't he pull the goalie with a minute and a half left to go for the win in regulation? Because that's how they're guaranteed not to be at home, not on the road.
Mm-hmm.
So Rico Blasi was asked about this too on ahead of Saturday's game by Sam Ekstrom on UST's radio. Like, hey, look, you guys are probably the last game, right? Depending on what Minnesota State, how the timing of that goes, but also maybe a little bit of something in the footnote. Bemidji State had senior night, so the game was delayed by just a little bit. So there was a chance that Bemidji State's game would have ended later. And then, that brings into the scoreboard watching. And Sam Ekstrom asked Rico, I think it might've been off the record, but it was like, hey, did you consider, would you consider pulling the goalie tonight, in regulation if you're tied? Right. And he's like, no, I don't think so. And the difference there is that if St. Thomas pulls the goalie and gives up that goal and they lose in regulation, now they're going on the road in the first round instead of getting the 2 seed.
The difference for them is seeding of the top 4, whether they get 1 point or 2. But if they get none, they might be fifth, right? Yeah. It
could have been the same for Bowling Green. Is my point is that if Bowling Green pulls the goalie and gives up that goal against Tech at the end of regulation, now they're sitting at 5th. But Bowling Green
they're
was
still 5th, though.
Right, but they were 17 minutes away from getting a home playoff game and St. Thomas bumping down. I think
Tech
Bowling Green.
They were never winning in the 3rd, though.
Right, but at one point they were tied in the third period when Bemidji State had a lead over St. Thomas. But Bowling Green was never playing at the same time that
That's
Bemidji
right.
State was
Like if
tied with
Bowling Green,
St. Thomas.
if Bemidji State wins in regulation, then Bowling Green could have hurt themselves.
And for the entire course of that game, Bowling Green Bemidji State was winning in regulation. So it was until really early in the third period when the BG and Michigan Tech game is done. That's when St. Thomas, Cage Sturzer ties the game. And then St. Thomas was rolling in that third period too. So it felt like, a regulation win was kind of coming for St. Thomas as well. But that's a whole other topic.
That's true.
The interesting thing that's come out of this, and this is
have all the
more
games
from
on Saturday start at the same time.
That's a really good point though, because I did think about that. I do think they're
I do think that should be considered going forward.
It's something.
I think there's two things that could be considered.
Western teams play at 7 and the Eastern teams play at 6, and we all start at the same time.
Or 5 and 6.
It's more like decision day in soccer, where everything's at the same time.
Yep. Or 5 p.m.
Not that it always comes down to this crazy, but
I prefer not a 7:00 start on a Saturday. Personally, I
get it.
Like going to Slim's after the game if I can. So, but in the topic of I said, hey, no CCHA school has pushed back on these tiebreakers. I think there are two things that could come up this summer that maybe they reconsider in the future, and that's one, if there is in the event of an uneven schedule where two teams only play each other once, which we will get. We pulled some questions, and I got a lot of questions sent to me about what the future of the CCHA schedule is going to look like without St. Thomas next year. So we'll get into that more because I did ask some questions about it yesterday. But in the event that in an uneven schedule, could the team that goes on the road who beats, if they pick up a win on the road and a tie, or a couple of wins on the road in any fashion, except for a shootout because those are ties, could those be determined as head-to-head if you do it on the road? I think that one could get talked about this summer from amongst the league and the league members. The other one is, like you said, just the I'm blanking. What were we just talking about before that? Cordell, you're gonna have to cut this part. Oh, the start times. Yes, the start times of the final day, just to maybe, because that is a little bit of an advantage then for St. Thomas playing a later start time, knowing what they have to do and what they have to get for.
Because if Bowling Green knows what they need, because St. Thomas and Bemidji are going to overtime, right?
Yeah.
Then they know they need to win. Then maybe they're pulling their goalie, or maybe they're reconsidering it because now it's tied, right? Like instead of being Bemidji's up 2-0 or whatever it was, or 2-1.
Does Bowling Green, if in hindsight, obviously, do they go back and pull the goalie at the end of regulation to try and get that extra point so they can get a home play? Because
Which is funny, because then if they do and they give up the empty netter, Tech wins the conference on an empty net goal on a tie game, right? Like that would have been weird.
Right.
Let me ask this: if that
I'd
situation,
be happy, but I'd be weird.
If that came up in a game, whose job is that? Is that an ops guy up top being like, "Hey, Denny, you got to pull the goalie here because we need this point." And I know the game's tied.
Yes. I was at a game in Mankato. It's got to be 5-6 years ago, where I thought it was Mankato. I know I was at a game one time where we thought both teams should have pulled the goalie. Because one team needed, one team was down 1 and one team needed a goal for it was weird. I don't remember the specific situation of why, but literally both teams should have pulled their goalie because they needed another goal for some reason. And it was, I don't think it was tied, but yeah, it was weird.
I get that, but also, a coach is not, the last thing they're thinking of is, okay, well, what's going on around the rest of the league? That's the last thing they want to be thinking of. So I'm like, who relays that information out? It's got to be the ops guy up top, right? Who's got maybe multiple games going and knows what the scenario is. But that is bizarre. And I've seen it happen in the NHL before on the final day of the regular season where, a team is leading. I remember the Wild. It happened with the Wild just a few years ago.
Well, and the big problem this year is it was so much. It's not like you're just caring about 2 games. All of them, all 3 games mattered. and you didn't really know, like we said, like if Bowling Green pulls the goalie, but then Bemidji finds a way to win, then they're stuck in fifth if they gave up that goal. And yeah, it was.
Well, and I kind of thought coming into the weekend, I kind of thought that Bowling Green needed all 6. I mean, that was sort of the way I was thinking. Just looking at the standings, I'm like, they need all 6 if they want any chance of at home ice, and they got close. And so then at that point, I started thinking, like, towards the end of that game, I started thinking, like, oh boy, they should really pull the goalie here probably. And then it gets to overtime, and I'm like, well, if Bowling Green scores, it's exactly what Augie needs. And then
and then Koskapurdy gets tripped, and here we are.
Hey, Tim. Now, if you want to talk about missed calls, there was another one earlier that game that a lot of people thought was a goal that should not have been overturned.
Yeah,
right?
I'm not going to argue that because I don't understand. Like, nobody knows what goalie interference is, so I'm not going to even sit here and. I'm going to be happy that call went our way, but it didn't help us enough anyway. So I've been on the other side of crappy goalie interference calls in my life. So
the big discussion point, though, about this league right now, though, does seem to kind of revolve around Tech and BG, and the fact that Bowling Green did go on the road and beat Tech in the only 2 times they played. And it's caused an avalanche of Falcon fans essentially being like, why did those 2 games not matter? That is the phrase that keeps coming up in the discourse around
the 24 do too. That's why.
Because the other 24 do too. And that is a great way to put it, Tim, because
that is perfect.
I have a really, really hard time justifying why Bowling Green's those 2 games should count more so than a loss at home to Northern Michigan, giving up 2 late power play goals against Bemidji State to force overtime at Slater Arena, a loss against Lake Superior State. You can go down the list for every single team in this conference. If Minnesota State had finished outside of the MacNaughton Cup, you'd say, why did you score 1 goal against Bemidji State at home? Or why did you go to overtime with Northern Michigan when you had a 2-1 lead with 1:36 left? And those were just in the last 2 home weekends for Northern Michigan, or for Minnesota State. For Augustana, it's why did you lose on the road against Ferris State? Why did you essentially drop 3 out of 4 to Bemidji State, with one of those being at home, giving up a 6-on-5 goal before losing in a shootout? For Michigan Tech, it was
2 goals in the last minute of regulation against Lake State and St. Thomas. To go to overtime and lose in overtime or shootout, I forget.
Splitting at home against Bemidji State, dropping a road game against Northern Michigan, right? Like
game.
It was a home game. That was a home game. My apologies.
Yep.
A home game against Northern Michigan. For Bowling Green, right? We just did the same there. For St. Thomas, like I think I said this on the CCHA show and Chasing MacNaughton last week, but we're going to look back at the turning point in this league, and it's going to be 5 minutes left on Friday night against Augustana, with St. Thomas having a 3-1 lead, giving up 2 goals in the last, 5.5 minutes, Trent. And Augustana goes on to win the shootout, shuts out St. Thomas at 4-0 the night after, and then St. Thomas takes 2 points on the road against Bemidji State to close the season. Trent, correct me if I'm wrong, but if St. Thomas wins that game in regulation on Friday night, they clinch home ice. And Augustana is now in jeopardy of falling out of home ice.
Augustana 100%.
Augustana then takes 5 points, clinches home ice. They were the only team to have home ice clinch going into this weekend. And now Augustana finishes in 3rd place, right? We can go up and down the list of how every single team in this league has had chances to win. And it comes down to the point of, if you are upset with your tiebreaker, you did not win enough of your games. That's it.
Yeah. I go back to a presser I had 2-3 weeks ago with Garrett, and a quote that he said was, this is the time of year. I think it was going into the Michigan Tech series. It might have been after the Michigan Tech series. It might have been before. It was around there. And he said, this is the time of year where you kind of look at the schedule and you kind of wish you had some of those points that you lost early in the season. And boy, is that an evergreen statement right now when you have a lot of fans that are complaining about it. And that to me, Augustana's perspective is the best, especially when I texted Garrett. He said he didn't watch a single game. It's because they didn't. None of this was in their control. None of this stuff is in anybody's control. All you can control is what you're doing on the ice. So go out and get your points. And
there's no point in him watching because it's not like he knows who he's going to play to be scouting yet, right?
Yeah.
Like you wait till
Tell
you
me
figure
who I'm
that
going to
out.
play and let's go. Like that's the
Otherwise,
best mentality you can
check
have.
Out and enjoy his weekend, right?
Yes, 100%.
Focus on recruiting for a weekend, right?
And I don't think the guys are all that concerned about. I mean, sure, maybe they have to go on the road and play at St. Thomas in the second round if they win their first round series. You think they're really worried about having to go back to St. Thomas and win where they just did it? Like they feel like that they're confident enough that they can go win there. And like I know you want a home game or and that might be a difference maker, but regardless, you're gonna have to go on the road for that. And you've already won there once. Like they're not worried about that. They just want to play the game.
It's the only, like, you make a good point about that too, of like, how much do the players care in this situation? And for Augustana, it's far less, right? I mean, like we said, they've already had home ice clinched. The chances of them getting a top 2 seed going into the weekend were minuscule at best. And I know they drastically improved after Friday night's slate of games, but and not just for a top 1 seed, but for a top 2 seed. And but even then, like you said, Trent, like the coaches weren't even watching the games, and for the Augustana coaches, the other coaches were certainly watching the games.
Oh yeah.
For Bowling Green though, I wonder what that locker room is like right now, of just you're coming off such a high and it followed such a low too, where you look at Bowling Green, they had their kind of their fate in their own hands for home ice 2 weekends ago, and they had a big lead over Minnesota State on Friday night and blew it at home. A lot of it kind of turned in that game when Crampton gets in that scrum with Reed Morick, that big scrum that went kind of viral on Twitter, through my guy Terry Burton. Love you, Terry. So I just try. How many episodes can I drop? How much I love Terry Burton. Like that, but that was the turning point. And then obviously Minnesota State wins in regulation the following night. And so for Bowling Green, like Trent, you and I talked about it last week. We thought I thought they were kind of firmly in 5th, and I didn't think they really were going to pull themselves out of this, just with kind of the lack of fight they showed again at home against a Minnesota State team that was reeling offensively. And I think they still kind of are reeling offensively if we look back to what they did this past weekend against Northern Michigan, again at home. But for them to kind of get off the mat and get 2 massive wins, be in the fight, finish with 49 points, which I think if you told Bowling Green before the weekend, hey, 49 points, they'd say we have a really, really good shot of winning home ice. And not only that, you don't get home ice and you got to go back to Houghton. I wonder what that looks like, in the Bowling Green locker room right now. But even then, I think it goes back to your point, Trent, of those guys just went out there and did it. And I think there's a supreme amount of confidence that they can go out there and do it again. And, you and I, Trent, have talked to Dennis Williams a few times. He's an outstanding coach, maybe even a better interview, which goes to say how good of a coach he is, because he's one of the best interviews we've had on the show. And I think even part of him is like, we probably made our own bet. I'm sure they're frustrated. And I think feeling frustrated about how this played out is justifiable. You're frustrated with the tiebreakers. You're frustrated with the fact that you didn't win enough games. You're frustrated with, how it played out, and the fact that we just went to Michigan Tech. Like, we didn't get a chance to play Michigan Tech all year, and now, we just went out there and won 2 games, and now we got to go back out there. Those frustrations are fine to me, but saying, in the context of saying the CCHA needs an overhaul, which is, I saw that from
but that's where we go. I mean, that's Twitter, Jared. Like, we don't have rational conversations on there, Jared.
And the people who are on there that are saying it's a Minnesota State or a Minnesota bias in this league, I'm like, shut up. Stop whining. Literally,
there's there's just
call the wambulance.
That's what it is.
Wham.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a bunch of Tech fans that are mad that Tech has the most wins in the conference and finishes 4th. And that all comes down to the fact that we are terrible in shootouts. We are 0 for 3 in shootouts. Like, if you win 1 shootout, we are tied for 2nd.
Yep.
Yep.
So
that's what it gets to, but that's the truth. Like, the only reason we have the most wins is because we're the best team in overtime in the league. And then we lose in overtime on Friday or Saturday. Bemidji might be better. Sorry, Jared. But I thought they were like
5-1 in overtime games.
Bemidji or like Tech is, I think, 3-1 now.
Tech is 3-1 in overtime.
Yeah. So they were 3-0 going into Saturday night. So, like, win percentage, they were doing better than Bemidji, and then the trip happened. So
Bemidji State, by the way, Bemidji State went to overtime in 10 CCHA games this year.
Yeah. Well, I remember that article you wrote when, like, none of the top 5 had lost in regulation yet, and then that lasted a day longer, I think.
It didn't even make it 24 hours, Tim. It didn't. That story did not make it 24 hours. So,
I also want to point out, for the past month, maybe 2, maybe even 3, I've been saying it's crazy that of these 5 teams, one of them will be left out.
Yeah.
I mean, here we are. A very deserving team is going to have to go on the road because that's just how it works. I mean, there are 8 teams. 4 of them will have home ice. We've known that for forever. I mean, that changes nothing. And it's also like there were 3 points separating every team going into Saturday night, coming out of Saturday night. Now 2 points. That is just how tight this league has been, and it's been that way for the past. Like, very indicative of just how it's all played out.
Well, and it fits very much with what we all said before the season started. I don't know how to separate these 5 teams, and they
really
basically proved it, that it came down to a bunch of tiebreakers, that these teams are all right there.
I'll also throw out, too, that going back to last year, and specifically last year, where it was decided by points percentage, and that's a whole other thing. I'll get to the last year in a second, but there was a lot of chatter from our fellas down there in Mankato, and a lot of people in Mankato about the strength of the CCHA as a whole, that the fact that they could not lose a game to Northern Michigan at home and still be in a position to win an at-large bid for the NCAA tournament. And it was really the big talking point throughout the entire second half of the year was, if the CCHA was better as a whole, Minnesota State and the season they had last year, they would have been guaranteed to be in the NCAA tournament going into the last weekend without having to win the Mason Cup. And so what happens this summer? The CHL pool opens up. 3 teams take immense advantage of it. St. Thomas even gets probably the rookie of the year, and Lucas Van Vliet Pilling was from the CHL.
Yeah.
Again, another candidate for rookie of the year. He's not going to win it. I think it will be Van Vliet, but it's another story. And the league got better. The league got better as a whole. You can look at the NPI standings, and it'll show you the league absolutely got better. I think even in the margins, when you look at Northern Michigan, Tim, you've had a much closer eye on Northern Michigan this year than us, just being kind of covering the UP as a whole. Northern Michigan is a better hockey team than they put on the ice last year. Ferris State maybe took a little bit of a step down, but Ferris State's playing really good hockey right? They're there right now. Yeah. And so
they're not going to be a cakewalk this weekend for Minnesota.
No, absolutely not. And so for months and months and months last year, going into this year, it was just the CCHA needs to be better. The CCHA needs to be better. Well, now the CCHA is better. And if you want to complain about where you fit in a tiebreaker or where you fit in these standings because the CCHA got better, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You either want the CCHA to be firmly a one-bid league where it cannibalizes itself from November to February, or you have this, where you have realistically 5 teams having a shot at an at-large bid going into February. And we're still here at this point where we're going into the Mason Cup playoffs, and it still has a realistic shot at being a 2-bid league. Now, a lot of things kind of need to break the right way. Augustana basically needs to sweep Bemidji State, beat St. Thomas, and St. Thomas needs to beat Lake State, and then Augustana needs to lose in the Mason Cup championship game to whomever, probably Minnesota State or Bowling Green or Michigan Tech, and then have probably some things around them break their way where there's not a ton of bid stealers coming around from the other conferences, specifically Hockey East and the NCHC, and we'll see. Like, that's what we'll see. But this is what a competitive league looks like. You can't say, well, we want to be a good team, but we want the league to be better, but not good enough to where we don't get home ice with 49 points and beating Michigan Tech on the last weekend, or like it's the cake and eat it too, and you can't have both. So
and look at how much higher the home ice line is this year. It's 5 points higher, I think.
But last year, Tim, when going to the points percentage aspect of it, like,
I mean, really, all points percentage was where do we place Augustana? Otherwise, it's just points, right? Like,
yeah,
right.
Because everybody else played the
same. And that's also why Augie fans have no room to argue too, because that was come on, man. Like, you were allowed into the league a year early, and a lot of people were not very happy that they had to go with points percentage, and you only played half of the games that everybody else played.
The only
and
fair thing about
second.
that was if they somehow finished tied, they basically automatically lose the tiebreaker because it was still wins.
Yep.
It was still regulation wins, which you can't win when you play 10 less games.
Right? So it's frustrating in a lot of respects to see this discourse play out the way that it does. And again, it's just college hockey. Like, this is what college hockey boils down to a lot of times. There's never a way where all 9 teams go into the postseason happy. It's physically impossible. But this is not an attack from the CCHA on certain teams. These are not rules that are made up on
this was all going to play out and who was going to be involved in these tiebreakers, right?
And this is not a directive of the CCHA to disregard Bowling Green, Ohio, and all of their great fans that live there. Looking at you, Terry Burton. And this is not a dictatorship of the CCHA. These parameters and the rules of this league were voted on by the league and their coaches and their athletic directors. I'm sure those, each school can kind of handle their votes however they want to do them. But anything else to add on to that before we get into our questions? Anything else you guys want to get off your chest about some of the big talking
questions? But I thought it was interesting in some back and forth that I had was just like that the tiebreakers amongst the 6 conferences are as different as they are. But that just goes to show you that it is a conference decision, and it's decided by those teams. I just thought that was interesting because I was surprised to find out that the CCHA and the NCHC are the only ones that require head-to-head to be based on equal number of home and road games.
And that's the one where I don't have an issue if they want to kind of reconvene and look at that tiebreaker for the future, but only if the only thing I would change it to is if the road team beats the home team,
right.
Then you can use it as head to head. But even then, like I still prefer the 4 games.
Did Bowling Green really win that tiebreaker? Then is my because they went to overtime, or are we going by NCAA wins? For that,
it'd be NCAA wins.
Yeah,
I would imagine.
It's going to be 1-1 if Tech had won in overtime, which they did not. I'm not saying right.
Correct.
But you're not going to give Bowling Green the tiebreaker win if it's 4 points to 2 points and they won in overtime, right? That's even, right?
Right.
I mean, they played very even hockey. Bowling Green just came out ahead both because it was 4-3 and 1-0.
Yeah.
No, it was. I mean, it was a very close and a very good series, just as it was for. I mean, pretty much every single series around the CCHA this weekend. So that's the one though where I if they do kind of want to reconvene on a rule, that's the one where I could see him doing it. I don't think they're not going to change the schedule next year. It'll go back to the traditional unbalanced.
26.
It'll still be 26. Teams will still, but we have a question. We have a couple questions about that. So, let's just get into our questions right now. And I think the first place to start is actually a pretty good one. And I think it's about where the MacNaughton Cup was this weekend. This is from Cam, Mayo Maniac, resident idiot of Mankato.
I had it sitting on my coffee table in the living room.
Oh, weird. I had one on my coffee table.
You had it too? Okay.
But mine was just the cutout. So.
Apparently the team did that. That wasn't league initiated.
Yes.
A lot of people thought that was a league thing. No, the league did not give them a cutout.
Thing. Which that's very funny. So
it was
Cam
a very
says,
cheeky thing by the team, and I think it was pretty funny actually.
Yes, Cam says, could we get some insight on the thought process behind taking the cup to Tech on Saturday as a team that was looking to drink beer out of it, in parentheses, again? The cardboard cutout we had simply didn't do it for the fellas. As of now, the cup is still isn't in the building on Sunday at 3:30 p.m. Is there a definitive protocol in this situation? He also said, how mad is everyone that you can't kill the Mavs? LOL. I will not be touching that one.
I'm going to try my best not to touch that one.
There you go, Tim. Thank you. So here's what happened with the cup. As of Friday at 8 8 o'clock. I still don't think they knew where they were going to bring the cup because it
they
depended
definitely
on what.
did not. Definitely did not.
So that decision was made in the wee hours of Friday night and Saturday morning. Don Lucia brought it up to Houghton, and I think it's not one reason. I think it's a mishmash of reasons. The first being that there were two teams in that building that could still win the cup, and that Bowling Green could win a share, Michigan Tech could win a share or outright. And the other part of it too is that neither of those teams had won it in some time. When's the last time has Tech won it? Tim, when's the last time Tech? 2016. When's the last time Bowling Green's won it? I probably should have looked this one up.
1980s, if they ever have.
Correct. So,
the 3 years that they could have when Tech was in the CCHA back in the day.
I'll find it.
There you go.
They may have won it in one of those years. I'm not sure.
I think when you look at it from
that.
Yeah.
I think when you look at it from like the entire league perspective too, I mean, Minnesota State was in 4th place going into this weekend. They were still in 4th place last night. I know they're playing Northern Michigan.
I will give them credit in that the two places it could have been are Mankato and Houghton. It's not going to Bemidji where St. Thomas can win it on the road. That's less likely.
Correct.
Those are the two places it could have been on Saturday.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the only reason I think it makes sense that Mankato would be the one chosen is they are more likely to win in regulation and guarantee a share, which is where they're coming from. Like, that's the most likely outcome of the possibilities, is that all Mankato has to do is win in regulation and they're guaranteed a share. But They were also very unlikely to be in first place in any tie-breaking scenario. They lost most.
They had one tie-breaking scenario, or they didn't have a single tie-breaking scenario for first place where Minnesota State would have had the number 1 overall seed. Now, granted, like the tie-breaking scenarios I don't think played a role in the MacNaughton Cup stuff really at all, because I mean, again, each team wins a share of the MacNaughton Cup. If 4 teams win it, each of them gets it for 3 months out of the year, and then you got to ship it off to Bowling Green, then up to Houghton and down to St. Paul, right? So I think it is a little like, it is kind of funny to think about how somebody had to go to Mankato to pick up the MacNaughton Cup to drive it to Houghton only to bring it back to Mankato. Like at some point, there had to have been a point where somebody was like, why don't we just keep this in Mankato and then bring it up to Houghton the next day? But it is what it is. And I know, for the players and, probably the fans, I guess it is a little kind of, I don't know how to describe it, but it is, you obviously want the cup, you want to do it, but we're talking like most of I shouldn't even say most, because they had a lot of turnover, but a lot of those players have done it. Like we said, that was their 10th MacNaughton Cup, second in as many seasons.
8 in the last 9.
Beer still tastes just as good if it comes out of the glass, the can, or the bottle. Like it doesn't, and guess what? Beer tastes even better when it comes out of the Mason Cup. So that's just how it goes. And so that was kind of the situation of why the Mason Cup was in, or the MacNaughton Cup was in Houghton. And yes, I'm not touching the how much can you not kill the Mavs question. Let's see.
Spoken like a true Augie grad there.
Before I comment, Jared.
This may be from Nick Mueller. This may be really premature and overreacting to recency bias, but do you feel like the CCHA will be modifying its conference schedule format next season?
Absolutely not.
Well, yes, because it won't be the same as this year.
No, it'll go back to an 8-team schedule. Teams will play 26 games. They will play 6 of the 7 teams 4 times, home and road, for 2 games apiece. And then it'll be like the rotational schedule where you play one team once. And it'll kind of flip-flop back and forth between you getting 12 home league games and 14 home league games.
I don't like that at all.
Okay. Why not?
I don't like playing 12 and 14. I don't like it. Either play 24 games or play 28 games. Don't play 26.
So that leaves room for 8. Okay, so
I think they should play 24 conference games, but I understand how hard it is for some of these teams to get home non-conference games, and that's why they pick 20.
But then you have more of an unbalanced schedule in that when that happens. And I think the CCHA wants to get as close as it can to having a balanced schedule while also honoring each team's ability to have non-conference games.
Imbalance in the number of home and road games, so it's never quote-unquote fair.
Right. It would rotate, though, right?
It will rotate. It will alternate. So basically, if you have 14 home games this year, you're not having 14 home games next year.
Yeah,
correct.
I mean, maybe not this year because of the
Forget this year and
weird one.
Right. Forget this year.
But I would guess every team that had 14 home games this year will not have 14 next year because you have the 3 teams that had 13 that we can give them 14 instead of whoever did this year. But yeah.
I'd rather. I don't want to go to a 28 game league schedule.
I don't either. I guess
I value conference or non-conference games, especially in the CCHA, with kind of the uphill battle it is to get to a 2-bid league, or potentially in the future, like we look down 2-3 years down the road, if this league could get to even a 3-bid league and be positioned a little bit more like the ECAC. You need those non-conference games, especially in the Midwest when you have Minnesota State, Augustana, and Bemidji State, playing a ton of those NCHC teams in North Dakota, Duluth, and St. Cloud. Like, those games right there are so big in determining how many CCHA teams get in. And if you take 2 of those away from each team, you're basically saying that a few teams need to separate themselves head and shoulders in this league down the road. And it's just not that viable in a long-term perspective in this league. So I would be a little bit more open to going down to 24 so that there actually could be more non-conference games to help in that respect.
I think that's the better answer. From a conference perspective, I want 28 or 24. From an NCAA perspective overall, I understand how they settled on 26. If that makes sense.
I think I'd still prefer the 26, and then in the rare cases where you get, the tiebreaker between 2 teams that only played each other twice, and plus it's already put in place there too, where I think you get 12 one year, you get 14 the next year. You can.
I'm pretty sure as long as we stay at 8, once you start this year, you're just going to be rotating through who you only play twice, and and it's kind of going to be I don't think St. Thomas and Augustana are ever going to play twice.
Well, St. Thomas,
sorry, they're not.
Minnesota State, yeah.
But like Bemidji State and Augustana are going to play 4 times every year. I think. I'm pretty sure it's kind of an East-West split of who you're playing twice.
I don't know if that's. I'd have to double check on that.
Rivals, because
I don't know, because this year
we added Augustana.
Bemidji State and Minnesota State only played twice this year, and that's, I don't know if the 9-team league kind of threw a wrinkle in that, but
because we weren't East-West this year, we were 3-team pods this year,
right?
So it was Bemidji, Tech, and Northern, right?
Yeah.
We're in a pod, and St. Thomas, Mankato, Augustana were in a pod,
and then
Lake State,
Bowling Green,
were in a pod.
Yep. Got it.
But now if we go East-West, I'm pretty sure everybody everybody in the West will play each other 4 times. Everybody in the East will play each other 4 times.
Yeah.
And then
you'll rotate out those.
And then the only thing I know is that even though Tech and Northern are the dividing line, that Tech and Northern will always play 4 times.
Got it.
Yeah.
Anything else on the scheduling stuff before we move on to the next one?
Yeah, all I'll say is this is an anomaly this year, and it's crazy that this happened. I mean, it was coincidental, and a lot of the anger and frustration for people over some of the tiebreakers is very reactionary. Let it go, because it will change next year, and you probably won't run into these tiebreaker scenarios the same way that we had this year. And it's just, I mean, it's kind of like what we thought going into the league, the season. Nobody knew where to put anybody, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. And, they were all right there.
The other aspect, too, of this is that if you're complaining about the tiebreakers, your favorite team has likely benefited from the same tiebreakers over the last 4 years.
Yeah.
The other thing that I, one of the reasons that I think a lot of people that looked into it were high on Bowling Green going into this year is because of their pod. They got to play Lake State and Ferris State 4 times. Not everybody got to do that. And that's one of the reasons I thought they'd come out ahead in this.
Bemidji State only played each of them twice.
Yeah. So like that whole thing of like part of the reason they don't win the tiebreaker against Tech is because they didn't play them 4 times. But part of the reason they didn't play them 4 times is because they got to play 2 of the worst teams in the conference 4 times, and the rest of us didn't. And it'll be different going forward because it'll just be that one team that you don't play 4 times. But
which will then again be the same as it was before.
Yeah. What was the St. Thomas Augustana head-to-head? What happened there in their 3 games?
Well, Augie beat him twice.
1-0-2.
2 weekends.
Augie was 1-0-2. Okay. 1 regulation win, 2 ties. But I think in total of 9 points, they took 7.
That's right, because there was a shootout in overtime.
Were those in who had 2?
2 of them were at St. Thomas.
Okay, so
it was
Augustana had the same argument that Bowling Green has.
Yeah,
then.
Yeah,
that they should have won head-to-head because they did better on the road than.
Again, though, Augie lost at Ferris State, lost at Lake State.
Yeah. No, there's reasons, right?
Yeah,
we're all here
at
for a
Bemidji
reason.
State.
Yeah.
Right.
Twice at Bemidji State.
Yeah. But they basically have the same argument Bowling Green does because they did better with more road games.
Yep.
Yeah.
From Big Dub, will Augustana stay in the CCHA or bid with the NCHC? No, they are going to stay in the CCHA. There has not been one iota of anybody from Augustana hinting at even trying to get out of the CCHA. That cannot be. That same cannot be said for other teams in the CCHA, specifically one team in the CCHA.
I hear they want out. I hear they want out because they're pissed about this tiebreaker scenario in the league that allowed them in a year early.
in a league that allowed them to finish second place despite playing only 16 league games last year. Augustana's itching to get out of the CCHA. No, that's not happening. From Beaver Banner Podcast, Ian was the one that sent this in. Shout out, Ian. Most likely of the road seeds to make it out of the first round, if this past weekend is any indication of how the playoffs are going to go, I think we would be in for a couple of quote-unquote upsets.
Bowling Green, you got to think Bowling Green's got a good chance. I think Tech's going to play. I see this series going to 3 games, but I mean, Bowling Green just showed that they have a really good chance here.
Can I tweak Ian's question a little bit? Because I think we'll get into more like how the predictions are going to play out, but how many of these first round series do you guys see going to a 3rd game?
Don't we always predict way more than actually happen every year?
It rarely ever happens.
I think one year we were like, I think they're all going to go to 3, and none of them did.
Yeah, I know, right? I need to send that out today. I see 1, Bowling Green Tech.
I see at least 2, and I'm gonna fall right into the same trap again.
You're gonna pick Ferris, aren't you?
I am gonna pick Ferris. I think Ferris
is win this year.
No. But I do think Ferris is playing really good hockey right now, and I've been screaming it for the last month. And I feel like finally people are listening to me. But Ferris,
oldest team in hockey.
I think Ferris, Bemidji. I think 2 of Ferris, Bemidji, and Bowling Green will force a 3rd game. 3 teams playing really, really well right now. So I don't know.
The only way Lake State does is if Rourke Appleby finds himself and
I was not
hasn't been
impressed.
That way for a while here, so
I was really not impressed with Lake State this weekend in a lot of different ways. I thought they'd show a little bit more fun. That team was dead on Thursday night to start that game, and when you have kind of some runway to claim 6. And again, like we talked about, Trent and I talked about a bunch last week about how much do these teams really care about finishing 7th or 6th place between Bemidji and Lake State. Like, I know Bemidji didn't really care that much about where they actually ended up in the standings. It was more just about how they were playing. But when you look at it from that perspective,
about Lake State, they did not play very
right. And like, I know Bemidji State loves how they're playing. I can't imagine Lake State feels the same way. Hang on, let's see if we got one more. This is one that it's not a CCHA one, but I'm actually so glad somebody asked about it so I can talk about it, because Augustana and St. Thomas are guilty of this. Not quite a CCHA question, but I'd like to hear specific thoughts on the lights off for a goal celebration discourse from the UConn-UMass game.
It actually did affect Augie.
Yes, because this is why I wanted to bring it up. Because it has severe MPI implications.
If they scored that goal when the lights turn off, right? If the lights don't turn off and they score that goal, Augustana drops in the NPI, right?
And we're gonna use this to kind of transition into. We're going to use this to kind of transition into the NPI aspect of this, and we can kind of let Trent take the ball and run with it there. The light celebration for goals, I think, is one of the stupidest things. It's so stupid.
When I'm trying to shoot, I hate it.
Legitimately, who wants this? If you're a fan,
people that want shootouts.
If you're a fan at the game, do you not want to see the players of your favorite teams celebrate a goal? It's for one, it's also incredibly dangerous in situations like last night where there isn't a goal. The play has to keep going. The lights just turn off. Like there was a second last night or on Saturday night where the lights just literally just turn off.
It was like
what happens if the shot happens as you do that, it's deflected, it goes out of play, and the lights are off. You're telling that's not a good thing,
right? And I want to be very clear when talking about this too. Like, I don't have the resentment for here does not go towards the UMass production people for letting this happen. Like it's a human mistake, and it's they thought the goal went in, they pressed the button. I know I've talked with the Bemidji people, production people, about this. Hey, there was a situation this year in Bemidji where the game actually one of the games against Northern Michigan had to start 15 minutes late because they pressed the wrong button on the lights to turn them on after the national anthem. And there was a built-in 15-second cooldown on the light system. So for about 12 of the minutes, they actually started the game before the lights were fully back on. For about 12 of those 15 minutes, players were just kind of standing on the ice and sitting on the bench waiting for the lights to turn back on. And it's it's embarrassing. It sucks when you kind of got to realize I screwed up and I pressed the wrong button. But so I don't it's just a mistake, and it's a human error. It happens to the best of them, but I just don't know what these light celebrations are supposed to do in terms of maybe the fans love it. Maybe it creates a little bit of a different atmosphere. It's horrible for shooting photos. It's horrible for keeping accurate stats, especially for plus minus. It's a safety issue for Tim said, with pucks going out of the stands, or I don't know, two players screaming down the ice on a 2-on-1 when the lights go off when they're at the hash marks in front of the net. That is a gigantic safety issue, and it's just it sucks, and it looks horrible on TV. It looks absolutely horrible.
It might be fun in the stands to some effect, but it's horrible on TV when the whole stadium or the whole arena goes dark and all that, the brightness changing. It just looks weird.
Yeah. So, but we were talking, we alluded to earlier, it was so UMass basically comes down on a rush in overtime, turnover. It sends a couple of UConn players back on a 2-on-1. The UMass production person hit the lights, the goal celebration lights, that they slowly kind of dim down. Then the lights go off and it flickers between black and red and black and red. The refs whistle the play dead when UConn was on a 2-on-1 on the road going in for a very, very crucial game for UConn from the NPI perspective, but also just as crucial for Augustana too. So Trent.
Yeah, because they're separated by what, 100th of a point in NPI right now.
So Trent, give me kind of the rundown on where Augustana sits in the NPI right now, because they are kind of the last bastion of the CCHA for getting in an at-large bid. Now, I know there's some scenarios where it could break out in a miracle way for a different team to get an at-large bid, but Augustana is certainly the most likely in the CCHA right now.
Yeah, the third place team is the most likely. 54.05 in the NPI. Like you said, UConn 54.04 right behind him in the NPI at 15. So yeah, that would have put Connecticut at 54.1. So it would have put them 0.05 ahead of Augustana. Yeah, I mean, Augie's just got to. They can't afford any losses in the Mason Cup playoffs, so they're going to need to sweep Bemidji State and then get a win in the semifinals, and then they would see where they're sitting going into the championship game with a possibility of getting an at-large. That's still a rough place to be. And as far as the teams ahead of you, you have Wisconsin, Boston College, Dartmouth, Minnesota Duluth. Like, those teams aren't moving much. Boston College maybe has a chance to dip below. Like, they're within like striking distance for Augie to jump up, but 14's not a very solid spot to be in, especially when you start talking about some bid stealers, and there's a good chance in some of these conferences that we could see some bid stealers. You got Bentley, I believe, down there is the favorite in the AHA, right?
Yes.
And so, yeah, it's not the greatest for a 2-bid league scenario, but yeah, Augie at 14, Minnesota State at 16, St. Thomas at 17, Bowling Green at 19, now Michigan Tech at 22. And yeah, the series against Bemidji State's big because they're 46. If you lose that game at all, if you lose a game to them at all, it's going to drop you probably 4 or 5 point or spots.
And to kind of circle back on something I said too, where Augustana is the most likely. I know you said Minnesota State is sitting there at 16. Even if Minnesota State sweeps Northern Michigan or Ferris State at home, the bump they'll get from that is peanuts, right?
Like, it's just, it will be zero bump. Like, you're literally winning to stay where you're at.
Correct.
You may get like 2/100ths of a point, Tim, with a game like that, maybe 100.
I don't even know anymore. MPI is so much different. Like,
well, you can use that customizer on CHN, which is nice. So like, you could actually try to.
But basically, they released their probability matrix today. I think it was. I know it's been out. Yeah. Like, you can get there if you just Googled it. Like, it's been working like a month, but like, it's out there. So Augustana has a 21% chance of an at-large bid right now. Minnesota State is half that at 11. St. Thomas is half that at like 6. And then Bowling Green's at 2%, and Tech is somehow at a non-zero chance of getting an at-large bid.
Yeah, well.
And part of that is because they get the chance to sweep Bowling Green. Now, I'm not saying they will. I'm just saying they get the chance to play the best team in the first round of those teams.
Well, and one thing that's hurt Tech a lot, their quality win bonus, like when they've played their non-conference games, they don't have like huge wins out of conference.
No, because Minnesota ended up sucking.
Your quality win bonus ends up hurting you when you're talking about like beating team in conference that's like right there, like Bowling Green at 19. It helps you. That will definitely help them if they were to sweep Bowling Green
out of being a quality win.
Yep, exactly. Yep. So that's the big thing. They're a 168 quality win bonus. Augie's a 242. St. Thomas is the highest in the conference, 245. That's the Providence series. I'm assuming that helped them
100%.
the most.
Yep.
Providence sitting at 6 in the NPI right now. Minnesota Duluth is what's helped Augie. They shut him out in one game, and Duluth.
Yeah, Augie needs Duluth to turn it back on again a little bit. They've been really struggling in the second half.
As you watch the NPI throughout the nights, scores will go final, and you'll see teams move even after their games are done. And every now and then you've seen Augie jump a little below, you've seen him jump up a little bit, and a lot of that has to do with just how Duluth played. Like,
yeah,
it's kind of weird.
And how much of a quality win they get.
Yeah,
and that's kind of where the other conferences have that advantage because you get to play a bunch more chances for quality win bonus,
especially NCHC,
or a better quality win bonus.
Yep.
Which when we were kind of looking at it from the NPI standpoint, then going forward, I think the CCHA as a whole are big fans of then, Wisconsin, Boston College, UConn, and Dartmouth dropping any kind of games of any sort, especially home games against maybe some sub 30 teams, especially in these first rounds of these conference tournaments. A lot of these teams will get a chance to play at home.
That's now, and then we want like the top 10 pairwise or NPI teams to win the conference. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. No bid stealers. Yes. That's what Augie's like. If you're at large, you can't afford bid stealers at 14. I mean, that's the main thing.
Right.
I assume most of the chance for the CCHA to be a multi-bid league is Wisconsin, Boston College, Connecticut struggling, and nobody below them getting an auto bid except for Atlantic Hockey.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, is there anything else that we have missed that we want to go over?
Was that all the questions?
It's all the useful questions. I'm not going to talk about Juts is going tarps off to celebrate a MacNaughton Cup. So we're not going to touch
What about those Greece questions?
Not going to touch Greece on this one either. Although he did ask, how do you think the Tommies will handle year one in the NCHC? I think they probably it's so hard to tell because
right around there.
There's so much to be decided. Like there's a full recruiting class cycle through the end of the transfer portal and stuff. Like we need to figure out which
teams are going to look like.
We have no idea what St. Right. Like obviously they have to find a way to replace Lucas Wallen and Aaron Trotter, and I know Trotter's not going to probably start much of the postseason games, but he's been a pretty integral part in what they've done this year.
I love this freshman class they brought in, though. I mean, they have something special building with this freshman class.
I do think there's a chance that Nathan Pilling could sign. Just a big kid. He's already an older freshman. If you're looking at kids to sign AHL deals, I'm pretty sure Chase Cheslak's going to stay. In fact, I think he actually said it on a podcast that he's like, can't wait for my senior year next year. And Chase Cheslak's also an interesting one too, where the Devils do not have a concern of him going back for his senior year because his they hold his rights a little bit longer. He enrolled at St. Thomas at the semester of his freshman year. So
that's right.
There's not really a concern there for the Devils to get him signed after his junior year, which is always something you kind of got to keep an eye on for kids with draft or kids who are drafted, is that a lot of them will sign after their junior years because their teams don't want their rights to run out. The Devils don't have to worry about that. I'm almost positive Chase Cheslak's going to come back next year. Lucas Van Vliet is another one that could maybe sign, but again, I don't know. He has insane point totals. He just needs to get a little bit bigger, but everything else in him is great. There's just Vegas has no need to really push for him to sign right now. So, St. Thomas, we'll see what they add in the portal. We'll see how much more they dip into the CHL stuff, what recruits they bring in next year. But a lot of it depends, too, on what the rest of the NCHC does. Like I expect Duluth to bring back both of the Plant brothers and Jason Chogby because Victor Plant's coming next year. Now you can have a Plant trio playing together. But then again, though, like Adam Guyon will probably sign. Like at least that's kind of what I think. He was just playing at the Olympics, not playing, but he was at the Olympics with Slovakia. He's drafted by Chicago. Pretty high pick up there too. So what does Duluth do, right? Like they're gonna have a goaltending question. St. Cloud is another team. Like they finished third. Their entire top line could sign, and now St. Cloud's got to regroup. What does North Dakota do with Cole Reshny and
CCHA show? This is a CCHA show. Get it out of here.
You can go up and down the NCHC, and there's still teams that have yet to be decided. So
we don't care.
I would guess hover around 5th or 6th for St. Thomas.
Jared, how much did you talk on your show about what we talked about last week with like St. Thomas, like what it meant if St. Thomas won? Did you talk about that?
I didn't bring it up a ton, but I've thought about it a lot since then because the more I think about it, it's like there is a little bit of truth to it, but I think I still think it's like, I posed the question on Tech Hockey Guide of like if St. Thomas wins the league and then or doesn't sorry I said if they don't win the league, is that good or bad for the CCHA or something like that? And the fact that they would go to the NCHC, which on a national level is perceived to be a tougher conference to play in or a more nationally relevant conference to play in, which I would disagree with that notion. But from that aspect, like, would that hurt the CCHA in the discourse of it all? It's kind of a dumb talking point because it doesn't matter for anything.
Yeah.
I like that my big comeback was, I think it's worse if Mankato wins again, and then they won.
Well, I mean,
and I feel like I will just, since we're talking about all the tiebreakers and how it turned out, I will say this to the Minnesota State fans, like, one of the talking points I think you get nationally is that the CCHA is Minnesota State and everybody else.
Yes.
10 out of 12 years, that's been true. So, like, it's tough not to get away from that label.
Yeah.
When, like, the one thing that keeps it away from that is the amount of times that somebody else has made the tournament on top of Minnesota State or instead of, because they struggled in the conference tournament. But overall, like, I don't think it's great for the conference that it's 10 out of 12 and Bemidji's won it twice, Tech's won it once, and Fair State won it once since the reshuffle. I think that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, it's like there's always going to be pros and cons to, like, you know, any of these like, because there are pros to having like even not from like the like an NPI or I guess formerly pairwise perspective of that, but like, you know, if you have somebody that's perceived to be like it's one team and everybody else, then when that team gets beat, it's even more validating for the team that beats them in that respect. So, you know, I think
overall it'd be better for the league if other teams win the conference title, the regular season title. Now, granted, the Mason Cup and its predecessors have had different results. That's not something that Mankato has dominated in the same way.
And I can't believe I'm going to do this, but I'll throw something complimentary towards Mankato fans, and it could be served as a lesson for fans of other teams in this league. The one thing you didn't see at all this weekend was Mankato fans whining and complaining, which is rare for them not to. I'm looking at you, Cam. I'm specifically talking about Cam. That's the only one, and MSU the Herd. But, you know, they sat there the entire weekend watching every single one of the other 8 teams sit there and say anybody but Mankato. And it wasn't, why not us? Why not me? Why? Like they embraced the role of being a villain. They like the idea of being the devil you can't kill, which is the phrase that's been used 100 times this weekend. And I think a lot of other fan bases could take some solace in that. St. Thomas as well, you know, the few and far, you know, the few and the proud. The fact that it's like the chip on your shoulder thing. Like the sports needs villains is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And Mankato fans have fully realized the fact that they are the villains in this league from like the fan perspective and the fan, you know, sphere of things. Right. So, I think if other teams could take a little bit of a page out of that book and just kind of embrace being the villain when that opportunity comes around, if
I end up having a villain origin story, it's going to be the tweet I got this weekend of we get to keep the name because we're still chasing the MacNaughton Cup.
All right, gentlemen, do we have anything else? This was supposed to be a quick show. We went an hour and 20 minutes.
Yep.
That sounds about par for the course, Jared.
I had a feeling that would happen once I shot you the email link, Tim. But even if you weren't on this show, we probably would have gone an hour and 20 minutes. If anything, Tim, you probably prevented Trent and I from airing out more of our grievances, which could have gotten us in trouble. So thank you so much for joining the show today, Tim.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Pleasure to be on.
So, all right. Once again, thank you for tuning into this week's show, and thank you to our producer, Cordell Wright. To watch the show and to see clips and highlights from this episode, head on over to Midwest Sports Plus, the home of the CCHA Reporters Corner. For the audio-only version, subscribe to the CCHA Reporters Corner on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts from. Follow us on Twitter at Trent Singer and at Jared Obedo BP. You can check out our work at BemidjiPioneer.com and SiouxFallsLive.com.